Our next menu item that we have is our Edit menu. We can left click on that to find out what we've got. We've got our pretty standard functions. We've got an undo and a redo that work really well inside of Unity. We've got a cut, copy, and a paste where we can cut and copy paste different elements inside of Unity. We also have a duplicate option, and this duplicate option works really well in Unity. We'll take a look at that one. And we've got the delete option, which is shift and delete. And you notice that most all these have shortcut keys. I would suggest learning the shortcut keys as they will increase your production and speed up your workflow in a really good way. So we're going to start off, we're going to focus in on this object. We get a nice little frame view right here. We're going to go back up to our edit and our duplicate. You'll notice that the shortcut key is Control D to duplicate this object. I'm going to go ahead and select on this, and when I do, notice inside the hierarchy I've got a copy of that cube. It copies it in the same place where the object is. I'm just going to left click and move this over so you can see it. And we've got two objects in the scene now. So here we're actually able to just make copies of the objects in the scene and increase the number of these with relative ease. The next option we have is delete options. So whatever we have selected, we can do shift delete or just delete. The next one we have is our frame selected. If you remember that we have our F key for that one, you can see the F for the shortcut key there. Select on that to frame the object. And we also have a find option. So if we go up to here and we say find, you notice it takes us to our toolbar across the top of the scene view here, and it drops us right in here. This is a finding option. This allows us to find objects inside of the scene. And what it does is it blocks out the objects from view that aren't listed. So right now it's set to all, but if we go in here and we say, let's say, main camera, you'll notice that it keeps this one visible. It's going to block these guys out so that they're not as visible. And when we select on something that's not the object, it brings us back to our normal view. So let's say we rename one of our cubes. I'm going to go and just rename this one to floor. Now if we go back up and just again find Control F or just simply selecting right in here, we're going to say floor. Now as I do that, you'll notice this object goes out and this object is available. So it's a great way of searching through the objects inside of your scene, trying to find them and work with them. It's nice because it even becomes transparent so you see, the object that you're looking for. We'll go ahead and go out of that mode. The next option we have is a select all, nice and simple. Control A to select everything inside the scene. Our next option is a preference option. And the preference option is pretty straightforward. We're going to take a quick peek at it because we can get through it quick enough. Inside of here we have options for our general, our colors, and our keys. This is our interface and then our shortcut keys at the end. We have in our general we can set the actual editor that we want to work with. By default we use the internal editor. We can set it to Microsoft Visual Studio 2008. If we have that, we can set it up with that one. Our image application, you can either do it by the files extension or you can browse and point it to the editor that you use. If you're using the asset server, you can also set up your asset server here. Our auto refresh is by default on to refresh the viewport. The show project wizard at startup has been unchecked. So when you start Unity for the first time, you'll see that wizard start up and it asks you to do things. You can uncheck that here or uncheck it on that wizard. Compressing textures when they're imported. If you want to go ahead and compress all the textures as you import assets in, you can go ahead and select on this option. It's going to compress those textures. The next two options we don't need to worry too much about are editor and analytics, and then use pro skin. The use pro skin is basically changing between the pro version and the indie version for the skin. Our next option is our colors. Inside of the colors, we have a way of just adjusting the view that we see so that we can make this a little more modified to what we want and how we want to look at it. A lot of good options in here, so if you're someone who likes to change that up, you've got the options to do so. The next set that we look at is our keys, and inside the keys it gives us options for changing up some of the shortcut keys. A little limited, but it does allow us to change up some of these and get some of our movement the way we may want it. We have a default option at the bottom, so if you've adjusted them some, just click on the Use Defaults, and it'll bump you back to the normal. Below that, we've got our player mode tools, and inside of here, these options can also be found on your toolbar right in here. And those options are for playing, pausing, and stepping through. So playing actually activates it, puts you in the play mode for the game. And then the pausing pauses the game, and then stepping through allows you to step through frame by frame on your game. We'll look at those in a bit more detail when we get into the actual game, but we'll go ahead and push on them now. You can see Control P is a good key. We push that, it puts us into the game view. We can go back up, we can say let's stop it, or let's say pause it. As we pause it, it pauses the game. You can see right here. So right now it's actually pausing the action that was going in on the game, and then stepping through allows us to step through frame by frame. And we'll go ahead and stop it by going back on the play. It's going to stop the action. The next two options we have are load selection and save selection. So we can make selection sets. It makes it easy to work with inside of Unity. I'm going to make a selection of two objects. I'm going to go in. I'm going to do save selection to, let's say, save selection 1, which is Control-Alt-1. So I've got a keyboard shortcut already assigned. I'm going to deselect that, go back into my edit menu, go to my load selection, and go load selection 1, and poof, everything's selected the way it was in that selection set. That has a lot of functionality while you're working on larger projects to be able to switch between different sets of items inside of your world. It could be all of your coins, it could be all of your natural environment that you're working with, or scene object, or static assets. It lets you be able to select between those and move between those quickly. Your next option is your project settings. Inside of your project settings, these allow you the ability to change quite a number of options inside of the editor, inside of the project. We'll get into these in their own video. Below that, there's our render settings. If we click on our render settings, we'll notice inside the inspector that we have some options for render settings. As you recall, when I said the inspector would show things that you select in the editor and things that you select inside of the menu. So here we selected a menu button from render settings, and it's giving us information in the inspector, and this is where you're going to find that information. So if we look at the inspector and we see that we have fog options, we can actually turn on fog inside of our environment, and we can turn on a fog color, so we can change out the color if we want it to be a different color. And you'll notice that right now we're not seeing anything actually inside the environment, and this is because we haven't touched on it yet, but we'll go ahead and jump ahead just a little. Across the toolbar on the scene view, we have an option to change out the type of view that we have so that we can see it with the game view instead. We'll go ahead and turn that one off right now. The next one we have is the fog density, the ambient light, a skybox if we're going to put a skybox around, halos on the lights. These options we'll look at more depth when we actually start constructing an actual environment. But to know that they're there and how to get to them, it's going to be through that edit and through that render settings option. Below that we have graphics emulation and network emulation. This allows us to see what would our game look like on a lower end machine, so that we know, if our target audience isn't next gen, but we're developing next gen, then we can set those shaders down, we can set those graphics down, and get a better feel for what our actual audience would be, how they would view the game and what it's going to play like. Same with the network emulation. We can find out, what's it going to work as a broadband, DSL, ISDN, and dial-up. It just gives us a better idea while we're in development. And the last option that we're going to see is our snap settings. If we left click on the snap settings, we get our window. And in the window, we have a move X, Y, and Z. We have a scale and a rotation. So this allows us to change how much we're going to snap. It's going to be one cell space, 0.1 for the scale, and then for the rotation, 15 degrees as it rotates around. So let's say we select on an object. Now, to make the snap settings actually work, we can hold Control, and you can watch the object pop one thing at a time. If we change this to, let's say, 5, and then hold Control, left click and move, we can see that now it snaps at every 5. Same with the rotation, hold Control, left click, and it's going to snap to every 15 degrees. So a great little tool while you're working with your levels and setting things up, definitely one that you want to leave up and work with. And with that, we'll go ahead and conclude the editor menu, and we'll get ready for the asset menu next.